So how do both parties move forward after Trump's big win? Joining me now to discuss the questions swirling after Trump's election victory are Brad Bannon, Democratic strategist, and pollster Bobby Eberle, Republican strategist and host of the podcast 13-Minute News Hour. Brad Bannon, Bobby Eberle, thank you both so much for joining.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's great to have you both back on. Now, President Biden obviously going to be hosting President-elect Donald Trump in the Oval Office this Wednesday. Trump not extending that same customary invitation to President Biden back in 2020 during that highly contested, some might call controversial election. Brad, what does this sort of represent coming from President Biden?
Well, I think it's a very gracious invitation. Not only has President Biden invited Donald Trump to meet with him on Wednesday for a survey of the nation and the world, but Joe Biden has promised to attend Donald Trump's inauguration while Trump noticeably dished the new President Biden in when he lost in when Biden was elected in 2021. So I think it shows how gracious Joe Biden is.
So, Bobby, if this is indeed an olive branch from the Democrats, do you think that the Republicans are or should be prepared to pick it up?
I do. I mean, this was one of the things that was so great about, this learning, for the most part, that the election was over on Tuesday night. And there were so many pundits that didn't feel that was the case. I didn't really think it was the case, even though I thought that Trump would win and he'd win, most of the battleground states. To know on Tuesday night and then to see the results, how it was with the popular vote, with the Electoral College, it really brought some closure to that portion. And so what is the next step? The next step is the start of that peaceful transition of power. So I think it's a really nice move from Biden. I'm glad, Trump is going to sit down Wednesday and do it and let that process play its course, because I think over the next couple months to see that process in full action and have a gracious reception and attitude on both sides really turns the page on what was a very vitriolic campaign, and we can start fresh.
Now, switching gears a bit here, Pramila Jayapal, chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, saying, quote, "We have become a party of elites, whether we abandon working class people, whether they abandon us, whether it's some combination of all of the above." Brad, where did Democrats begin to rebuild the party?
Well, I think the biggest mistake Democrats made in the past election was they ignored the economic concerns of working families. Half of the Americans who voted last Tuesday, according to the exit polls, said that they were worse off financially than they were 4 years ago. And I think the big mistake Democrats made is to ignore the concerns of working people. And I think it's time for Democrats to adopt a populist economic program that points out the discrepancies between the growing wealth of millionaires and billionaires and the struggles of working families. And I'm sad to say, as a Democratic strategist, I think Vice President Harris ignored that issue through most of the campaign.
Now, former Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has rejected this narrative that the election was a rebuke of the Democratic Party, saying it's still the party of the working class. I want to play a clip and get your thoughts on the other side.
Well, there are cultural issues involved in elections as well. That's part of it. Yeah. Nothing is it. It's part of it. Because it's really hard to understand how someone would vote for somebody like Trump, who's been there for the wealthiest people. And again, I think the message that Bernie Sanders has put out is not the winning message.
Bobby, obviously right there, a clear instance of Democrats not seeing eye to eye after this election. Bobby, let's get your thoughts here. Why did working class voters choose Trump? And was it the cultural issues that Pelosi is suggesting there?
Yeah, I believe so in this sense, right? If you take the polling out there and you're polling people and say, what are your most important issues? There's what I call the surface issues. That's the ones that come up right there, the border, the economy, and crime. But underneath is this attitude that the government no longer represent them, and that the Democrats were pushing an agenda that they just didn't agree with. Culture always leads politics, and you have to know what the culture is. And if you push policies where the culture is not there, you're going to get pushback. And the American people have dealt with this with the boys and girls sports teams and other issues. And remarkably, when you look at exit polling and you look at the way some Republicans ran nationwide, they ran on that issue. Senator Cruz in Texas here won big. Everyone thought it was going to be close. He ran on that issue. So the culture issues are definitely important. But the Democrats misjudged it as far as the abortion issue and others as far as what to focus on in that cultural aspect.
Brad, the Democratic Party doing a lot of introspection right now, as we mentioned. What do you think the main takeaways will be over the next few months?
Well, I know what I think is the main takeaway. See, I disagree with the former speaker and Bob on this. I think the exit polls show clearly the Democratic defeat was a function of my party's failure to address the economic issues. Remember, one thing that's very important, the exit polls showed that 2 out of every 3 Americans think abortion should be legal in all or most circumstances. So I think Democrats were very much in tune on cultural issues like abortion, but we failed to address the working concerns of middle-income families, and that should be the biggest takeaway. And again, I respect Speaker Pelosi greatly, but I fundamentally disagree with her assessment of the outcome. And I'd like to say something because it's Veterans Day. I want to thank all the veterans in your audience who served their country faithfully, and the sons and grandsons and daughters and granddaughters of the World War II veterans who served and died in the pursuit of fighting fascism.
Bob, I'll give you the last word.
Amen to that. It was great when we saw tributes during the conventions and ongoing of these World War II veterans D-Day celebrations that are still there. And you see these people just, struggling to stand up and salute when they've given so much over the years. Not just in that immediate service, but the decades and decades afterwards. So our hearts and minds and thoughts should go out to all of them for their service, because it made America what it is today.
Yes, indeed. Happy Veterans Day to all of the veterans out there. Brad, Bobby, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, friends, thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And before you go, please hit that subscribe button above. Once you do, tell your friends, share it, spread the word about the 13-minute news hour so we can keep growing. And for more great content, check out these videos right here, and I'll see you next time.